Eric Herzog, CMO at Infinidat, explains why cyber resilience is so important for both enterprise cybersecurity and storage, recommends an action plan for CTOs to both secure their data infrastructure and boost their cyber resilience, and outlines the Infinidat technology solutions developed to support these strategies.
Okay, so if we can start with the question, why is cyber resilience just so important for corporate or enterprise cybersecurity? That'd be a good place to start.
Well, I think there's a couple reasons. First of all, cybersecurity has had a huge financial impact on the largest companies in the world and large government agencies. As an example, security analysts, not storage analysts, but guys in the security world, estimate that this year the cost to enterprises will be $8 trillion and projected to be $10.5 trillion next year. Additionally, many governments, for example, the EU and the United States government in March, both issued cybersecurity strategy plans, not just for the governments. So yes, government agencies, but really targeted at companies of what they need to do. So the amount of attacks is not going down. In fact, when the recent survey by Fortune of the 500 CEOs, not CIOs or CISOs, but the CEOs, the number 2 concern was cybersecurity following the bad economy. So it's not going to go away, and the amount of attacks accelerates on a regular basis. So this is something, whether you're a small company, mid-sized company, or clearly if you're an enterprise company, as well as government agencies. And in the government, don't just think the national government, not just the UK government or the US government, but literally down to the local level. Several local governments in the United States, even school districts, have been held for ransom in the United States in the last year. And I'm sure that's happening outside the US. So it's a very trying time, and not having cybersecurity overall and not including storage as part of that is a very risky equation right now, given what's been going on for the last several years.
And just before we move on to the next, just be interested in your thoughts. I mean, everyone's talking about AI at the moment. Do you think AI, I mean, theoretically, it's going to make the problem worse, but it's also part of the solution? Do you have any thoughts as to, will AI be on balance a help, or will it just make it easier for the bad actors to carry out their attacks?
So I think it's going to be the infamous double-edged sword. I think in certain circumstances, it will absolutely help the cyber mafia. And in certain instances, it'll help the good guys avoid the issue. But I do think that it's something that is really right now untested on both sides of the fence, particularly on the good guy side. I think it's going to start with the bad guys, and the good guys will catch up. I do think, however, it's going to be very situational. So one attack, it'll be AI led. Another time, the defense will be AI. And I don't think it's going to, I think it's going to, because they can use AI just like the good guys can, right? The cyber hacking, right? They're criminals. It's not like the old days with the guns and the knives like you see in the movies. Now it's with a computer terminal, and they're just as bad, and they're just as well trained as the good people are. So I don't think that the AI, I think AI is going to help both sides, but I think it's going to take years for it to either favor the bad guys or the good guys. I really think it's going to be one attack will be bad guy led with AI, and another time when the attack is thwarted, it'll be, the company or the government thwarting it using AI. So I think it's going to help both right now, which is not good, but it's not bad, because it's kind of that balance, right, Phil? And that's what I think is going to happen.
Okay, and then in terms of cyber resilience, the importance of it, particularly in relation to storage, again, it'd be good to understand, why it is just so important when it comes to storage.
Right. So when you look at it, most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time, the focus is on protecting the edge of the network, the core of the network, like the Cisco or Juniper switches, right? Doing stuff there, the app layer, and at the server layer. The problem with that, if you want to have a comprehensive cybersecurity strategy, mid-sized companies and large companies, almost all their valuable IP, whether it be their pricing information, their accounts payable, their accounts receivable, true IP, their manufacturing stuff, all of that, their customer lists, is all sitting on their storage. So you're essentially leaving the door. So you go on holiday. You not only forgot to lock up the house, you literally left the door wide open, not unlocked, literally open. You left the windows open, not closed and unlocked, but literally open. And there's a sign above each one of them saying, come steal my stuff, come rob me. And so storage is a critical leg of a corporate cybersecurity strategy. If you're going to have a comprehensive strategy and you're going to look at the edge, you're going to look at the core network, you're going to look at the servers, you're going to look at the applications. Remember, all those applications, where did that data go? Oh, wait, it goes onto the storage. So why would you leave that vulnerable? So that's why you need to include storage as part of a comprehensive cyber resiliency and cybersecurity strategy, not just the other areas. And by the way, it's starting to get better, Phil. So more and more customers are asking us about it. There's been more and more articles in the storage-centric press. And obviously, there's been a number of articles out in what I'll call the generic business press that, hey, cybersecurity needs to be broad, not small, but broad, or you're not being protected. And some of those articles, a couple I wrote actually, very much talk about that storage is a critical element if you want to have full comprehensive cybersecurity.
Okay, and in terms of when it comes to sort of actions, what would you recommend for the CTO looking at the problem? What in terms of how they can secure that data infrastructure that you've outlined? What's possible?
So the first thing you have to realize, it's not just about the primary storage. You need to make sure that your backup layers and your archive layers are secure as well, because otherwise, if I'm the bad guy and only attack the primary storage, the CIO is going to say, let's just go to last night's backup and restore last night's backup. We're fine. So the smart cyber criminals are looking at the entire storage infrastructure, primary, secondary backup, and even tertiary archiving. So one, you need to make now, as the storage leader or the CIO or the CISO, you need to make sure that you're comprehensively handling your storage, because those are three distinct layers that everyone is used to in the enterprise, and even in most mid-sized companies, right? They have primary storage, backup / secondary storage, and they usually have an archive. So you want to secure all of those. And there's probably 5 things that you need to do that in various areas. So one is you need to use immutable snapshots, because those are snapshots that cannot be deleted, right? And cannot be changed. So remember, malware, for example, is about deleting your data. So you have a huge financial impact. Ransomware is different, right? They try to get money from you. But the malware side, which has often been used and cited, as you know, in some of the recent country conflicts, they're trying to destroy the data, right? And so immutable snapshots prevent that. Now, remember, sometimes you have bad actors inside your company that could be in league with the bad guys or a disgruntled employee. So you want to make sure that you use what's known as an air gap. What the air gap does is separate the data plane from the management plane. Okay, so once you've created the immutable snaps, the manager can't go back and start deleting stuff. So you separate the data plane, the actual data that you're creating, from the management layer. Okay. The third thing you need is cyber detection. And there's 2 aspects to your cyber detection strategy. One is as an early warning system. So you're taking immutable, let's say I'm a global bank. I'm HSBC, or I'm Bank of Japan, or I'm Bank of America. So what you're trying to do there is you are trying to make sure that you have a strategy, right, where you can make sure that you're detecting. So you set up your snapshots, for example, or your volumes, or your LUNs, or your applications, and you want to scan them periodically, okay? And one, it can be an early warning system, okay? You can automate these systems. For example, we have one called Infinidat Cyber Detection, and when you do the scanning, you can automatically send information to a SOC, if they have a SOC, or if they've got sort of a broad security software they're using, kind of manage things, through APIs, it can send messages and say, that snapshot appears to have really anomalous activity. You need to check that out, right? So it's early warning. Okay, the second aspect of cyber detection is you've had an attack. And I think, Phil, it's become pretty clear all over the world. It's not if you'll have an attack, it's when and how often. The average enterprise now has 1,168 known attacks every week. And that number came from security analysts who track the security side, not from storage people like me. So, and that's the ones that they can track. Think of the 200 or so that they missed, right? Or, got through the sideways, right? Got through that little breach in the castle wall and they didn't catch them. So you're going to get one. So let's assume you have an event. Okay. Now what you want to do as you're cleaning it up, you've got good data, right? You've got good data somewhere, whether it be in your backup tier, whether it be in your primary tier. But before you restore it, remember, ransomware and malware is not like King Kong. In the movies, what does King Kong do? Pounds his chest and screams. In every King Kong movie you've ever seen, the old ones from the 30s, the ones from the 50s and 60s, the recent set of King Kong movies, what is King Kong doing? Pounding his chest and screaming. Well, malware and ransomware is all done surreptitiously. It is completely on the sly. It is the ultimate Jason Bourne spy movie or spy book. The ultimate. Under the covers, nobody knows. Super secret. They have no clue what's happening. So when you have had an incident, you need to make sure that what you're trying to recover, you think you've cleaned it up. What if you recover and there's ransomware and malware still hidden inside what you recover? So cyber detection A for early warning system. Then before you execute your recovery, you want to make sure the data you're recovering is in fact not infected itself. Okay. Think of the way, if I put it in an end user level, think of the way you've got Norton or McAfee or something on your home laptop and you're constantly scanning. In fact, you're going to laugh, but I'm actually running a scan since I'm coming to Europe for a couple of weeks. I'm running a scan right now of both my backup copies and my laptop to see if I've got any viruses. It's exactly what you want to do with cyber detection, except now you're looking for malware or ransomware. And then the last thing is now you have a known good copy, right? So digitalization world, you've done it, you found it, you've been attacked, you avoided it, and you have a known good, what's referred to in the industry as a known good copy. So now you want to recover that. So you want that recovery to be as fast as possible, near instantaneous. An example at Infinidat, we actually guarantee recovery time. We guarantee it. So on primary storage, what we call our InfiniBox and our InfiniBox all flash, we guarantee that we will recover any data set in a minute or less. And in fact, we recently did a cybersecurity end user demand gen webinar, and we recovered 175,000 video files of approximately 200 terabytes of capacity in 4 seconds. We also want to have that on your backup data sets, right? So we did a recovery of a 20 petabyte, right, Phil? 20 petabytes, not 20 terabytes, 20 petabytes, ginormous. It was a Veeam backup repository. We recovered that full repository in 11 minutes and 55 seconds. In fact, Veeam couldn't believe it. And so Veeam had us present at their booth at VMware Explorer in Las Vegas. Kasten, who you know is their container backup group, is having us present on backup with us and them together at the coming KubeCon show in Chicago next week. And I'm presenting in the Veeam booth next week at VMware Explorer in Barcelona. So they were so impressed. But it doesn't matter whether it was Veeam or Commvault or Veritas or IBM Protect, doesn't matter. So you want the recovery on the backup side to be rapid. We guarantee under 20 minutes. You want on the primary side. But the thing is, if you don't do cyber detection before you do that, and you have a fenced forensic environment, right, to do that testing, if you don't do that, you could recover a backup copy or that primary storage snapshot and have it have ransomware, and then you start the whole thing all over again. So it's very clear, those 5 things: the immutable snapshots, the logical air gapping, the detection capability, which has 2 subsets of that. You want to put it in a fenced environment, right, to test, right? You got to seal that off, test it, make sure it's good, and then you want to do the rapid recovery. So those 5 things are what you need. And this doesn't matter whether you're big, medium, or small company. Those are, if you will, the recipe book. That's the recipe book that you need for cyber storage. Now, by the way, they should have a recipe book for what they're doing with their network, right? Both internal and the edge. They definitely need a recipe for what they're doing with servers and a recipe. That's why a comprehensive cybersecurity strategy is basically these very recipes, right? It's the salad recipe, the main course recipe, your meat, the one for your vegetables, the one for your starch, and then your recipe for dessert. And they're different, right? You don't make a pie the same way you make a salad or a soup, right? So you've got your recipe for each thing, and then you bring it all together with a comprehensive strategy, just the way you know, when you have a nice dinner, it's done right. The dessert is great, right? The main dish is great, whether it be your meat, your fish, then you've usually got some vegetables, some sort of starch, and of course, whatever is your, you know, appetizer, whatever that may be, or your salad. But you've got a recipe for each thing, and you put it all together as a great meal. That's exactly what you need to do with a comprehensive cybersecurity strategy. So you've got what you're doing with the edge, what you're doing with the core on the networking side, the servers, the apps, and the storage, and that gives you the same at the higher level now. 5 things you need to do there, and then the 5 things in storage. And that's what a well-run company needs to do. And by the way, the CIO could do it without a CISO. As you know, some companies have the chief security officer now, but some of those medium-sized, they don't. So the CIO needs to understand enough or get some sort of consultant to help out. You know, the big companies usually have a CISO now, right? All the HSBC or Toyota, Daimler, Benz, right? They all have CISOs. But when you start going down a little bit smaller, they may not. So the CIO needs to be responsible for this. Bigger companies, the CIO needs to work with the CISO, though, to make sure the networks are covered and the servers are covered to that comprehensive strategy. But 5 things at the high level, and then 5 things specific to storage. And if you do those 5, that will help you. By the way, you're going to be attacked no matter what. So it doesn't matter. So what you want to do is try to minimize the attack, because it's happening anyway. And if they do get through, you want to minimize the damage, right? And you probably saw, as you know, the MGM Resorts, right? The gambling entity in the United States, they were hit recently. They filed a public document because the US now requires for publicly traded companies to have to file a document after a cyber attack. The direct cost was estimated by MGM to be $110 million US direct cost. Okay. However, if you took a look at their stock over the time frame when it leaked out, they had the attack and all that other stuff, and there are even some photos on TikTok and Facebook and Instagram of people videoing, you know, the casino floor and it be empty, right? Because you couldn't play. And on top of that, I think they even had trouble like doing the reservations and ordering food and drinks for the bar and the restaurant. So they were empty. But their market cap, since they're public traded, dropped $2 billion. So in addition to the 100 million or so hard costs, they had this $2 billion that affected their stock price. So this is a serious thing for the big, but if you're a small company, it might be enough to bankrupt you. Think about it. If you're 100 million pounds or you're £1 billion, you're not big, right? You're not HSBC. You're not, you know, British Telecom. You're not British Airways or Virgin. And those are types of things in a smaller that could drive you out of business, truly. I mean, MGM is huge, right? It's a, you know, 20, 30, 40 billion US dollar corporation. I'm sure they didn't like it, but they're not going bankrupt. But if you're that £1 billion company, $500 million, maybe even 5 billion, if you're not careful, this stuff could drive you bankrupt and put you out of business. So, and the impact, of course, when you're £1 billion or 5 billion pounds, you feel it much worse than if you're, you know, 100 billion, you know what I mean? So it's really important that everybody take this seriously, even if you're not, you know, a global Fortune 500 company.
Okay, and in terms of the scenarios you've described there, what is it that Infinidat brings to the party in terms of, you know, addressing some of those? You've referenced a couple of, you know, demos and stuff, but just the actual products, the technical solutions you offer.
So what we do is we provide a software technology called InfiniSafe. And we have the base, and then we have an extension. The base is our InfiniSafe. It comes with our InfuseOS. Every one of our products, our InfiniBox, our InfiniBox SSA, the all-flash, and our InfiniGuard purpose-built backup appliance, right, for the backup market. And that product works with all backup vendors. So the demo I mentioned earlier, Phil, was actually with Veeam, but it could have been with Commvault, but it was on our purpose-built backup appliance, the InfiniGuard. So that InfiniSafe technology comes on everything, and it's free. There's no charge. It's built into the operating system. Then the second part is the InfiniSafe cyber detection capability. That right now is available only on our InfiniBox and our InfiniBox SSA all flash. It will be coming next year on our InfiniGuard, but not yet. It is a little bit of an extra charge, and that will do the cyber detection capabilities, whether for the early warning system or whether it be if you have an attack, and it will help do, go through. It uses a machine learning algorithm, and very similar actually to the way virus scanning works. As you know, viruses, they get the known viruses, they put it into a thing, and then the good virus scanning stuff like McAfee and Norton, they actually look for new viruses, and they could flag you, right? Hey, something looks fishy here, right? Which is what my laptop is actually doing right now, and it hasn't found anything, thank goodness. But with InfiniSafe, you get the immutable snapshots, you get the air gapping, you get the fenced forensic environment to do the testing, and you get the rapid recovery. And that rapid recovery and the immutability of the snapshots, we will guarantee in writing. So we guarantee the recovery time, 1 minute on the InfiniBox and the InfiniBox SSA or less, 20 minutes or less on the InfiniGuard. That's in writing. And we guarantee A, the time of that recovery, and B, that the immutable snap is in fact truly immutable. Okay. So it's, if you will, it's a twofold guarantee. And then that comes in the base. And then you have the cyber detection capability, which we talked about at length about what it does. And that's the InfiniSafe cyber detection technology.
Okay, so in terms of, I mean, if you were advising, and I'm sure you potentially do, if you're having a conversation with a CTO who is looking to start, or maybe has started a project in this area, but it's perhaps not, bringing in the benefits they thought, what would you recommend to them to help them improve their cyber resilience? I mean, are there some quick wins and then longer term? What sort of strategy, what things to do to improve their cyber resilience?
So the one thing they want to do is make sure that storage is integrated with the overall strategy. Don't leave storage alone, because it's all got to work together. Second thing, everyone knows about disaster recovery: fire, flood, hurricane in the United States, tornadoes, earthquakes all over the world, right? That's what you think about. I would argue that an attack, if it gets through, is a disaster. So I would tell the CTO, the CISO, the CIO, they need to practice just the way they would practice for disaster, right? So I'm from Silicon Valley, as you know. We really do have earthquakes. I really have been in earthquakes before. Thank God, none very bad yet. But, if one's really bad, what happens to the data center? It goes away, right? So if you're an enterprise and you're in the western part of the United States, you have another data center somewhere else in the US or in Mexico or even in Europe, and you need to execute a recovery, right? You have to keep your business running. So I would advise those high-level execs, chief security officer, the chief information officer, or the chief technology officer, or all three if it's a really big company. They need to practice. They need to come up with how they would execute, get a document together, and once a quarter, they should practice. Now, by the way, in certain types of companies which are regulated, so think healthcare and finance companies, there may actually be laws depending on what country they're in, whether they're in the UK, whether they're in Germany, whether they're in Japan, whether in the US. There may be applicable laws that they actually are supposed to be practicing, if you will. Most of those are, as you know, regular disaster recovery, but I would argue that really a malware ransomware attack, as MGM saw with their hard costs of over 100 million and their market cap dropping by 2 billion US, that is a disaster. So they need to practice. So I would say at least quarterly. Obviously, very big entities might be able to practice monthly, just like they do for disaster, or you build it into your disaster recovery plan. So you've got as part of your cybersecurity plan at a high level. But remember, your disaster recovery plan is not just about your storage. It's your servers, it's your storage, it's your network. It's what do you do in certain instances, what do you do for the end users? What if the laptops get wiped out, right? It happens at night. So, and they're safe, but the building collapsed and all the laptops and the printers. So a comprehensive disaster recovery strategy covers everything, right? And if it happens to be really bad and people can't work or they can't work in that location, they usually have a people plan, right? and a software plan, because they've got to get the software back up and going too. So I would argue that if they're already doing that, why don't you just integrate the malware ransomware attack as if it was a hurricane, or if it was a flood or a fire in your data center, and just build that into your regular practice. I think that is very sound. And we tell all our customers that, because as you know, Phil, most of our customers are in the global Fortune 1000. That's who Infinidat focuses on, and where we've carved our niche, as we publicly have announced a couple of years ago. 25% of the Fortune 50, the 50 biggest companies in the world, use our technology, even though we're a small company. So all of those type of bigger entities and the large government agencies, right? I'm sure the UK national government probably has a disaster plan. If London flooded, what would happen? Or, as you remember, there was a fire in London hundreds of years ago. What if it happened again by accident? Those data centers are gone, right? So they do have a disaster plan. Just integrate cyber resiliency as part of your disaster planning, and then practice it. Because if you don't practice it, you know, it's not going to work, right? And again, these regulated industries, finance, healthcare, and a couple others, or government agencies, they probably have to practice the disaster part anyway. Treat it like, and then it becomes just built in. It's rote. It's built in. You don't schedule anything separate. You do your regular disaster plan if there's a fire, right, or whatever. And you also incorporate, well, what if we have a cyber attack? And that way, it's not extra work for the team to practice, because they just build it into the regular practice scheme, whether that be once a month, once a quarter, twice a year, whatever it is, and they practice it, but include as if a cyber attack was the burning down of your data center. And then I think that's a very effective way, and we advise our customers to do. We also tell our channel partners, because they also act as advisors, that when they're deploying these systems for the end users, they should suggest the same thing, because it's great to have InfiniSafe, but if you don't practice it, you know, and you don't really use it, what good is it, right? You get it, and it's free on the regular InfiniSafe, and the cyber protection is a pretty low cost, particularly when you think of one company, 110 million US dollars. I saw that, remember Acer, they're that Taiwanese manufacturer. They had a ransomware attack at the end of 2021. It's public knowledge. They paid a 75 million US dollar ransom. So this is big money. And if you're a small company, if it's only 2 million pounds, what if that wipes out your entire profit? If you're a smaller medium company. So that's why this truly can be a disaster. So build it into disaster planning, build it into your disaster practice and training. And then you don't have to make it a special thing, because every time when you make something special, you know how it becomes more difficult, right? Everyone complains, but if they know they're going to practice a disaster, make sure that part of that disaster training is a malware ransomware attack, and then it's easier for the company to absorb, and they get the practice they need. Because the last thing you want is have our software all ready to go, and then you never practice it, and literally you go into panic mode when you actually have an attack. And let's say it's a real, not an attempt, but literally they've got you, and they're holding you for ransom for, 10 million pounds. Okay, well, if you've been trained, you don't go into panic but say, okay, here's what we do. Just the way well trained athletes do, right? Yeah, you're gonna laugh, but even though I'm an American, I played rugby in college, so I know, and we practiced every day, right? After we went to class, we practiced every day, and we had our matches on Saturdays and Sundays, but we practiced and practiced and practiced. And in any sport, that's what you do. And I think that doing these practices, which is very common in the disaster area, just integrated in, no brainer, you'll be ready to go, and you won't be unprepared.
Just maybe one final thing. I mean, cybersecurity has perhaps turned into cyber resilience, which is a good thing, because it understands that it's not just firewalls and stuff like that, but there's more to it, including the storage. Do you think, I mean, for as long as I've been in the storage industry, I expect the same with you, business continuity, disaster recovery has been an expression. Do we almost need to come up with a new term to actually, illustrate what you've just said? Because I guess everyone thinks of disaster recovery, as you say, of, whether it's the climate or, a plane crashing and things like that. Whereas, as you say, it doesn't need to be that. So I can't think of what it is, but do you think it might be helpful to come up with a different name to incorporate the fact that a disaster doesn't need to be, a hurricane or
Oh, yeah. Well, you heard me say a cyber attack is a disaster. And I'm sure if you and I were working at MGM Grand right now, if we were working at the MGM Resorts Company, the CEO would be screaming at us. If you were the CIO and I was a CISO, or I was a CTO and you were the CISO, right now we'd be getting yelled at big time about what's wrong with you guys. So I really do think that, and that's why I said it is a disaster. I think it's more about the attitude, because sometimes, you know, when you come up with a new name, it gets lost in the shuffle. So I would just, and that's why I think, and why we tell customers, do you do disaster recovery practices? Remember, we do regular snapshot, we do replication, right? We do that. And why do we do replication from a data center in California to a data center in the UK, or a data center in the UK to a data center in Australia? You do that for disaster protection, right? So I think if we just get into the cadence that cyber resiliency and cyber recovery is just like a disaster, or should be part of your disaster, people are more likely to adopt it. That's why I like to use that strategy. I think if we come up with a total different name, that some people won't get it, go, well, what does that mean? Whereas you just say, you know, and I was in the middle of the United States, and we met with a partner, and they actually have a cybersecurity practice. So this is the vice president of cybersecurity for this reseller, and they sell all kinds of security software and security training to the end users. And I said, what are you doing for cyber storage resilience? He goes, what? He hadn't even really thought about it. And I said, in addition to obviously, you know, an opportunity for them to enhance their portfolio, the end users will get a much better solution. So by weaving it in this case, cyber resilience is part of a comprehensive cybersecurity strategy, and you have storage cyber resilience. Weaving cybersecurity into the disaster program, I think will get way more people to like actually test and do it right, right? And you know, you've seen, you know, you've been doing this not quite as long as me, but long enough where you read about the company had a disaster and they couldn't recover their data or their servers because they didn't practice it. So even today, not everyone's doing the disaster recovery practice, right? So I think if we integrate it into that, it's better. I still think it's clearly cyber storage resilience, and that clearly needs its own thing. But I think you need to make it part of the comprehensive cybersecurity strategy. And then that cybersecurity strategy needs to be built into your disaster plans, because whether it's an attack on the servers, attack on the storage, attack on the apps, that is a disaster, as you've seen from some of these public disclosures. You know, 75 million, that's a lot of money, right? And that's, I think, will get people's attention. So I'd say we're better off leaving it as part of disaster recovery and overall cybersecurity. Just make sure storage doesn't get left out.
Okay. As ever, it's been fantastic to chat to you, and your usual great insights into what's going on. So Eric, I really appreciate your time. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Always love being with you. And if there's anything you need, please let us know.